time of my life. I never felt this way before.
From building timelines to assigning the right people and even spotting risks across dozens of projects, Monday Sidekick knows your business, thinks ahead, and takes action. One click on the star and consider it done.
And I owe it all to you.
Try Monday Sidekick. AI you'll love to use on Monday.com.
A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with Mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
All right, so we're back with Ken and Mike. My uncles escaped Alcatraz, and I believe Mike let us know just before we started recording that this is an anniversary for you guys. Happy anniversary!
Yeah. Thank you.
So, explain to the audience what anniversary it is. I mean, we know it wasn't. Tell us.
Well, I guess it's 10 years since we started this process, which seemed like it was just the other day. But yeah, I mean, we've been working on this. For me, it actually probably a little longer than 10 years. But
for me, the journey started in 2015.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years has gone by pretty quick. But gosh, to think about how far we've come is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So was it, you said it was 10, 15, 25. So do you remember the actual month and day? Or is it just ballpark?
I do. It was October the 15th, 2015 was when the Discovery Channel Alcatraz Search for the Truth actually aired.
That's today.
So from then, it's been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Look at that. 10 years later. Now you're going to have your own show.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I mean, actually for me, like I said, most of my journey pretty much started in 2012, but it didn't really kind of take hold until we did that show with History Channel in 2015.
Yeah. And I'm a little miffed about the fact that you waited till 2012 to get involved in this, by the way. Because
actually, I was a little bit involved before then. I mean, I did write Ronald Reagan when he was president in 1986, I believe, and he actually responded to me. I wish I had kept the letter. I don't know what happened to it, but I did, write him a letter asking about maybe a pardon for the brothers. And he wrote me back, and it was, I'm not sure he wrote me back, or maybe it was like an auto-pen, letter. But he wrote me, I got a letter back from the White House, and saying they appreciate, my wanting to have this done, and that if I remember correctly, it was just more of a cordial type kind of letter, but nothing ever came of it.
Yeah. Well, that was only a couple decades after they escaped. So maybe too soon.
Well, I am definitely hot pursuing it today. I mean, every single day I'm either writing a letter to someone in the administration, someone in the state of Florida, like our governor, the attorney general. I've written both of my senators. I've requested a meeting with our governor in person. Never really kind of hear anything back, but it's not because I'm not trying.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yep.
Well, that's the thing. Your persistence, Ken, that's what really moved the needle on this case. That persistence and that pushing and that consistency. That's what we tell people that are in your position that want answers and aren't getting them. You just got to keep pushing, got to keep sending letters. You got to keep active in the case.
Yeah.
Well, I pretty much write a letter at least once a day. I am about ready to write another letter to President Trump. He's really kind of the one that can really move the needle. And, the only thing I've ever heard back was I shared it with the podcast several weeks ago, where they responded and said they were, pushing the case over to the party that should be able to help me. Never heard anything back, but I do plan to send another letter and then make a copy of that letter and say, hey, is there any word on what's happening? And hopefully maybe one day I will get a response.
Well, hopefully with what we're doing outside of here with the series that we're starting to prep for, that'll bring enough attention to it that maybe we can get some PR into the White House to get a meeting or something, or, because that would be awesome to be able to, at the end of all this, after the series aired, is to get some sort of statement from them, official statement after we've laid out our case,
right,
and see what's happening. And who knows, maybe we can kind of slip that into the documentary. Who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Love to do
take a drive or fly to the White House and see what we can do.
Yes.
If
they would just at least, one, like you said, acknowledge that there was a possibility that John and Clarence and Frank Morris survived the escape. I think we bring enough evidence to the case that they at least ought to take a second look. And at the same time, they ought to return all of the items that still belong to the family today. All the letters that the family wrote John and Clarence. There is no telling what is inside those letters.
Yeah.
Any of the letters that Alfred wrote to the brothers when he was in prison, and all of the photographs that were inside of those letters. And like I've said, I'm actually in one of those photographs. My sister is in one of those photographs.
Yeah, that's the part that I don't understand. Why can't they give that stuff back to you guys?
You remember when Art was on and I asked him, and he said, well, it's still an open investigation and this was still part of the evidence. And I was like, you're really serious about that, what in the world does a picture of me have to do with this case?
Yeah. Yeah. Why would they have it other than that they're like using it they're going to scrub it for DNA, but he said there's no DNA. He told us that on the thing. There's no
right.
DNA. So they've obviously, if they haven't tested it, which I doubt they did, I think it just went into a box and is just sitting there, or a file cabinet. And, evidence just lays. I was at the Superior Court a few weeks ago, and I was in an area where they pull documents and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's a sea of just boxes and filing cabinets, and how they can find anything. They may not be able to even find it.
I almost suspect that it's probably in someone's cabinet, either at work or at home. Someone's taken it home. Someone's considered it to be, pretty cool because it's part of history. And it's probably in someone's credenza.
Yeah.
So it would not shock me whatsoever that's the reason why they're not going to return it. Someone's claimed it as their own, and it's going to take either a federal judge or someone like Kash Patel or even the president to demand that the FBI field office in San Francisco, which is where I believe it's at.
Oh, you think it's there?
Return it to the family.
You don't think it went back to headquarters? You think it's still in the field office in San Francisco?
And the reason I say that is because when we met with Marshall Dykes in 2012, and he gave us a copy of the last letter that my grandmother ever wrote to her sons, which was Clarence. You remember we talked about it. It was dated June the 11th, 1962, actual day of the escape or the night of the escape. It shows up to the prison. Who knows? I don't know how fast the mail was back in 1962, but it didn't show up the next day. It was several days later.
Yeah.
And so, Marshall Dykes makes a Xerox copy of that letter along with the envelope that it came in. That's how, and I have a copy of it. It's just a copy. So I know that in 2012, he had access to that letter. And if he had access to that letter, he had access to all of the other letters that were still in their cell the next morning.
Well, I do know for other serial killer cases and things like that, they do keep them in the field offices. We've heard that a few times from people that they don't send them to DC. They keep them, and people take them home. Like a massive case, like one of the most famous serial killer cases. The guy took it home. He took a box of all the stuff, just took it home, and said that
it's like is not the one who actually has them, or it could but it could actually be even Art because he worked on the case at some point in time.
Sure,
or it could actually be in some cabinet at the FBI field office in San Francisco.
Probably.
Somebody has them. You cannot tell me if they consider this to be, evidence that they were going to use, that they ever caught them, that somehow it's just got misplaced, but everything else didn't get misplaced. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll be a good question for both Lenny and Stuart when we see them next week.
I would love to know what happened to them.
Yeah.
I do know that, when I spoke to Michael Esslinger and Art years ago when we were doing the History Channel show, and both of them told me that they saw the pouch that was found in the water in the bay, and they actually saw all of the letters and the pictures in a cabinet there at the archives. And now the archives are saying they don't know what happened to it, that, it's been misplaced or whatever. And it actually could still be there, and they just don't want to show it.
Well, we did find out from the archive in San Francisco that they did get rid of a lot of the archive from 1962 and 1963. That's it.
How would you get rid of evidence?
Is that from Amanda?
No, This is from the television archive.
Oh, the television archive
in San Francisco. They got rid of everything from that year.
Well,
now, why is that? Because I think
all of the tools, and
I just think somebody had footage of something. Somebody.
Yeah, the local broadcast stations.
They all got rid of it.
We're hunting for archive from that time period, and it doesn't exist.
Well, so if it doesn't exist today, I go back to Marshall Dykes. How was he able to grab the last letter that was ever sent and make a Xerox copy of it?
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be somewhere, right? Because that same letter that my grandmother wrote that showed up days later was somehow still in the hands of the FBI. Why didn't they return that letter?
Yeah. What part of the country do both those gentlemen live in? They live on the East Coast, West Coast?
I believe Marshall Dykes lives in Nevada or either Utah.
Okay. Got it. So he's on the West Coast. And
yeah, I could definitely find out.
No, I don't need to know. I'm just curious to see if they were close enough to where they actually can walk into the field office. And, because they're both U.S. Marshals. Is it in the FBI files, or is it because the Marshals got transferred over to the Marshals, is it in their files? So whose archives is it in?
Well, yeah, exactly. But, here's another good thing to talk about with the FBI files. Those 17 volumes that people have access today, one of the things the FBI was very good at is they took a photocopy. You can't quite see it that great in the FBI files, but they took a photocopy of every single piece of evidence item that was left behind. All of the tools, the boat or the raft that was left behind, anything that was there, they took a photo. Why is there no photos of the pouch and all of the items that were in the pouch if it was supposed to be part of the evidence. There's nowhere in any of those 17 volumes will you ever find a photo of the pouch or any of the letters or any of the photos. There's an inventory that they talk about of the photos, but nothing else.
So there's no photos in those files that things are. They're just lists of what they have photos of.
Yep. And how strange is that? Why would you take photos of everything else, but you didn't take photos of one of the key items that you say, or the FBI and the people at that time running the case, that they consider this to be evidence that the men drowned, that they have some kind of problem and they drowned? Why would you not put that in the FBI files? Why are there no photos of it? And then I go back, well, how in the world did Marshall Dykes, how was he able to go make a photocopy in 2012 of the last letter that was actually sent to Clarence from his mom?
He's got security clearance still.
Yeah, but
even when they retire,
they still exist. Those letters are still out there somewhere, and he knows where they were at.
Yeah. Interesting. What do you think, Mike? What do you think?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack, going back to the kind of the anniversary aspect. One of the things I was thinking about as we were sort of pondering what we were going to discuss this episode, the 10 years has come and gone very quickly. At least to me, it has. And the word that I can kind of sum up everything is, well, two words: either obstacles or challenge, or both. Because when I first saw the History Channel documentary with Ken, and I talked about this before, how I was really drawn to the story, and it's like, I know there's more here to tell, and this is a big story, and I want to be a part of it. Reached out to Ken, and he was pursuing the screenplay that he had written, trying to get that produced into a film. And so it took a year for him to finally sort of come back and say, okay, we can work together. So I had to wait a year for that. And then when we decided to work together, we started, reforming the screenplay. And when I realized it was a bigger story than a movie, that it would need to be a miniseries to tell all the pieces of the puzzle and paint the bigger picture. Then we revamped the screenplay and made it into a pilot episode. And then, the ensuing episodes after that, and kind of fleshed out or worked out several seasons worth of stories to tell. And then we started pitching them to different production companies. And that took a bit of time, months and months and months of pitching and getting responses. And then finally, we got a response from Texas Crew that Ken had worked with before. And at first it was a joint effort between the two of us and Texas Crew. But then little by little, they started kind of pushing me out the door. And then it was just Ken. So Ken signs with them. And then so for the next year after that, so this is, like 2.5 years after 2015, he's working with them. Well, nothing happens with that. So his contract with them ends, and then Ken and I are able to partner up again. And then we start repitching it to different production companies. And then we get in contact with Carga 7, and they're really excited about this. They want to work with the project. And then so we signed with them. And then for a year, and this was the same thing with Texas Crew, it's like, oh, this is really good. This is not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when. They both said the same thing. So after a year of pitching it, promoting it, trying to get it happen, nothing happened. So eventually our contract with them ends. And then we eventually get in contact with Expedition Unknown and, get that episode out of that. But, the disappointment is they weren't really interested in really solving the case, which was sort of strange, but they just wanted to tell more of the story. And then that sort of came and went. And then it was the book. We realized at this point that the show that we were wanting to do didn't happen. So then we worked on the book, finished the book, and then it was a matter of pitching it, promoting it, trying to get an agent interested. And we sent out hundreds of query letters to different agents all over the country. Finally, after a number of months, we got a response from 2 agents that were actually serious about the book. We got some tepid responses, but nothing happened with those. And then between the two, we chose the one where we signed with the agent, and then she started talking to the publishers, and the no's kept coming. No, we're not interested. And we were just about to the group that she had sent him to had been exhausted. And so I said, so what's the group of the next batch you're going to send it to? And she says, there is no other batch. This is it. If they say no, we're nowhere. Well, finally, the last one said yes, and we signed with them, and got the book out. And then we're promoting it to, because you have to tell them how you're going to promote and market the book. And then eventually we run into you. And, it's really the kind of the first real excitement after all these years that we get, from you about, hey, this is a big story. We want to be a part of it. We want to help solve this thing. So over the years, it was just no after no after no.
That's the industry.
Right. It's the industry. So, I'm not saying this like I'm shocked to hear this.
No,
but it's the story that won't die. Just when you were saying, and Cindy, you were saying this earlier. You have to have persistence. You have to have resolve that this is a story that has to be told. And despite the closing doors and the no's, it's just the way it goes. I mean, I did a show called Backstory on AMC years ago, and it was all about Academy Award winning films that almost did not get made. Same story. 10 years. No. Everybody, slamming doors in their faces. And these are massive films and became Academy Award winners. So you can't ever take no from people as an answer. And that's why when we read the book and we were like, this is amazing. This story is happening. So it's just a matter of when, and now it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like when I sat there and after we met you guys and we did a few podcasts, and then you guys said, well, we have this one thing, we're not sure if we're tied to anybody. And you sent me some paperwork, and I read that thing like 20 times. And I'm like, there's nothing here that doesn't preclude us from getting this thing done.
It's just an amazing story.
But, it's just like that book that I really, the
book is amazing.
The book is amazing, but it's just like, it's the obstacle is the way. I don't know if you heard, but Ryan Holiday is an author, and he wrote this book, The Obstacle is the Way, which is basically he tells stories. It's basically a modern version of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. And as far as, and he says, if there's a rock in the way, you just go around it. Just keep on going around the obstacles, and the obstacle is the way. And that's what you guys been encountering. That's what most people who are trying to either find answers to something, like, we deal with families with missing loved ones, and, that have been brutally murdered, and they can't even find the bodies or anything like that. And we still help them pretty much daily to try to find answers. And it's just like, wherever there's an obstacle, we just go, all right, well, where can we take it further? Who can we get to look at it more? It's like, we don't, and it's tenacity and persistence.
But I have a question, Mike. So when you first reached out to Ken, were you skeptical about his theories or anything like that? Was there any part of you that was like, well, maybe we won't find them. Maybe we won't find the answer. I don't know. I just, it's such a big story that's so opposite of what the public has been led to believe. I'm just curious if you had any of those thoughts when you first met up with Ken.
Well, I was obviously very intrigued with the evidence that they presented. I mean, the two biggest pieces, of course, is the photograph. That's the big one. And the second one were, the Christmas cards. I know Art was very dismissive of those because they weren't postmarked, so there's no way to date them. I mean, at best, the only dating you could really do is if you somehow found out when those cards were manufactured, what the time frame for those was. Was it pre-1962, post-1962? When did those cards come out? That's the best you can do because there's no way to date it. But it was the idea that not thinking of Ken as a liar, saying they received the cards when they really didn't, or the time frame that he and his brother indicated in the show. I know for Art, he's looking at it more as through a forensic lens. That's why the Christmas cards were not really embraced by him. But of course the photograph was, because, just the look of the brothers, it's obviously post 1962. They're bigger, heavier, older. The clothes they're wearing is very 70s style. And then of course you have Fred Breezy's account of meeting them in 75 or around that time and taking the picture. So you have what he said, and then you have this physical evidence that seems to corroborate that. So I thought, okay, there's something here to explore. There's something here to examine that's, you know, as Art has said, it's actionable. You know, it's not a conclusive answer, but it's leading you in a strong direction where he's saying they're in Brazil. So, okay, now we've narrowed it down to a country. He never says exactly where in Brazil, but he does give those clues about the Chrysler factory or the Chevrolet factory that limited it down to 2 different locations in Brazil at that time. And then you have the other pictures of the river, the mountains, the termite mounds that helps you narrow down the location. And so there's a place you can go to. And Ken had been wanting to go to Brazil for years and years, but you know, we didn't have the resources to do that. And then once you're down there, who do you talk to? You're going to need someone to translate. You're going to need somebody who can get you to places as a Brazilian that we as Americans couldn't get to, or looking at records, possibly, you know, titles, deeds, letters, newspaper accounts, things like that, that you're trying to locate these people. But I thought there was enough there that this is worth exploring and seeing where the trail led us. So there was never a time when I thought, this is a dead end, this is a bust. You know, it's not going to end well. I thought there are so many different avenues that we can pursue the story. And we've talked about this many times, how many layers there are to the story and how many connecting points, you know, to the brothers that you can pursue leads through those stories, you know, Cohen and Whitey Bulger, you know, other family members, you know, Fred Breezy, of course. So there's things to pursue that lead us in the direction. And obviously that pursuit was so strong that you were able to get a show out of it. You know, you're able to sell to the network a show that's going to continue to pursue this and hopefully get the answers that we've been seeking with getting experts, that you're bringing experts into the fold that we can nail this thing down possibly.
Yeah, well, it's a mystery. It's a huge mystery. It's an iconic, you know, place, Alcatraz. It's very, for lack of a better term, for TV networks, it's sexy for them because they can kind of build something around this, you know, infamous island that they said that was inescapable. And now, you know, now we know that from, I didn't know this until we started doing. There's so much that we learned about this process and about Alcatraz. Like, you know, it's like, I just thought for sure no one can swim in those waters.
I know, me too.
You know, never.
I was just lived like in that area. I lived there too. I was just like, there's no way. But then when you think about it, you're right. The Tampa Bay is bigger and scarier, right?
Well, I mean, and I proved that you could do it.
Yeah.
I had never done a triathlon in my life. And I had just started taking swimming lessons in February of that year, and I did the race in June of that
That's
year.
awesome, Ken.
Yeah.
I love that story. That's so great.
And then even when we were there for the podcast, we're taking the ferry back. There were people swimming all over the place.
Yeah, there was lots of people swimming there that I was shocked because I did not expect. Then we saw a big whale. Yeah. I mean, like, people are just not afraid. They're in there.
But you know, something you said made me kind of think about this. When you think about, say, like the Amelia Earhart type story, you know, everybody's been trying to search for her plane and what happened to her. The authorities never really kind of came out and said anything one way or the other about, you know, oh, she drowned, or they drowned, or they crashed, or they're dead. In our case, though, we're bucking the system because the authorities came out early on and said, you know, there's nothing to see here. The 3 men drowned, you know, their bodies are the bottom of the bay or washed out to the ocean. And we're bucking that system. We're bucking that story.
Yeah.
We're changing the history of what the authorities said. And so I think we, you know, there might be some pushback and probably, you know, from people that don't want to admit that they were wrong about this.
Well, no, I agree. Yeah. And it reminds me of, like, you know, while we were doing this a few months ago, I was actually producing and editing this UFO documentary. and it was interesting because it was all about, you know, the Roswell stuff and how the government was feeding people information about UFOs and using experts, feeding them to experts and scientists, saying, and people who would actually see stuff and says, they go, oh yeah, that's exactly what you saw. Keep on giving us more information about that here. In fact, we're gonna deputize you. You're gonna be part of our investigation. But you know, if you see anything else, but what was really happening is, you know, they were testing new weapons and new aircraft themselves, you know, in their spook program. And they came out years later, and they even had some very, 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 you know, reputable people where they actually did this whole TV show, live, UFO live. And they had like, I forget, like the guy who was one of the guys who played in MASH, actor in MASH, who hosted it. It was like this big thing, and they had all these people on, and they were talking to experts, and then they came out like a couple of years later and says, oh yeah, it was all made up. It was all made up. We just wanted to kind of keep you, and they're still saying that.
Right.
So it's like, I feel like we're on that same path where we're trying to prove, you know, that they, not only did they escape, but they lived out their lives. They're the UFO we're trying to prove that exists.
Exactly. Yeah. They, you know, oh my gosh, I would actually have to say the discovery of Mickey Cohen and in this story really kind of changed my whole perspective of how and what happened. You know, I mean, once I learned about him and his involvement and how he got out of prison, and, you know, and then I started thinking back about, you know, my uncles traveling out to Los Angeles in a time, you know, when they didn't have any, or the family didn't think that they had any money whatsoever. And they go out to, you know, Los Angeles, California area for 3 months. And they're, you know, they come back and they have all this cash. You know, Clarence is driving a new car from California, and their whole lifestyle changes. For years, you know, I remember my mom telling me and looking at pictures, and I used to always wonder why would they go to California? What was in California? You know, it made no sense until the discovery of Mickey Cohen. And then you started kind of thinking, oh my gosh. I mean, you know, and when they robbed the bank and they were, you know, in Ohio, they were actually on their way to California. They were going back to California. I mean, and you almost kind of like, at the time, the family was like, why are they so fascinated with whatever is in California? And now, you know, as we learn this information, it just really kind of all starts making sense. And when I first started, you know, talking to Mike about this, I was like, I thought, well, maybe no one's going to believe me what I'm saying, you know, what I'm finding. And then as me and Mike started digging into this, I mean, I think he even started going, oh my gosh, this is making more sense than it does anything else.
Well, I'll tell you, if you hadn't written the book and done all that research, you and Mike, and had that to really kind of lean on, and we spoke to you about this, I probably wouldn't believe half the stuff.
Right.
But the fact that I'm serious, because
it's true. I mean, we were skeptical in the beginning, and then when we read the book, it kind of solidified it. Because, like you're saying, Ken, for me, Mickey Cohen was it. I was like, that's the turning point for me, because that makes sense. You know, Supreme Court Justice Warren, all the stuff tying together. That's what turned my.
And the thing about Mickey is, you know, somebody of that importance in those types of resources, having people and money and access to things as a high-level mobster, the brothers needed him to get them out. Without him, I don't think the escape would have happened. They might have sought the help of others, but it would have been another failed escape. Either they would have been caught right away, or they would have been shot and killed trying to get out.
Right.
Because we've talked about this before, one of the documents that's in the FBI report from an FBI agent was saying, you know, it had to be somebody in the prison who got released, did reconnaissance, got the boat, and then somehow got that information back to the three escapees. Well, Mickey Cohen's the only one that fits that criteria, and he also had the motivation. He was very eager to do that, both personally, of I'm gonna get these guys for incarcerating me, especially the Kennedys, and also he was friends with the brothers. That, as Ken had said, that they knew each other years before, because they grew a marijuana farm. They grew it on the farm. They got caught by their father. That's how they were getting their money, was selling the marijuana to his operation. Fred Breezy was a part of that, being a pilot, picking it up, shuttling it to wherever he dropped it off. And so Mickey Cohen is the key to everything, to making this happen, because if he was not in the prison at the time, helping them, assisting them with the boat and other resources, they also talked about the false IDs, the money, the transportation, the safe house in Mexico. All that had to be there for it to be a successful escape, because, as we've also talked about, is when people break out of prison, their plan is run. That's their plan: run and hide.
Yeah, get away as fast as you can.
Right, but then eventually you need food, you need change of clothes, you need shelter, you need you need to get as far away as possible. That's not going to be on foot. That's going to be car, plane, train, something. But you're going to need help because you don't have any money. So how are you going to pay for these things? So you need help. You need assistance to make a successful escape. And the brothers had all those things through primarily Mickey Cohen. So
yeah, I want to throw something out here, is that because I've been thinking about this, because Mickey Cohen didn't really have a problem until the Kennedys got in office. So he was pretty much operating with impunity, pretty out in the open. Because like when I asked, I was digging around because I met some through our contacts, some old detectives that were that had family members who were in the Los Angeles Police Department intelligence unit in those early 60s. And they, and he the son became a cop in LAPD too as well. But he was telling me stories about Mickey Cohen, who, he pretty much ran with impunity, like especially after they believed that he was the one who took out Bugsy Siegel so he could run the whole West Coast. Mm-hmm. And so what I find was interesting is that they didn't have problems. He didn't have problems until the Kennedys got involved. And then all of a sudden he gets thrown in prison, and then he gets let out by Chief Justice Warren. And so we know that Mickey had political ties. He had probably had judges, he had politicians back. That's because he operated for a very long time. Most of the mobsters back then, that was part of doing business. They had all these connections, and they would pay people off. It was a very corrupt system. But that was the business of the day. So I think when you think about when he got let out, that was almost like, obviously it was someone he was politically connected to that actually, his lawyers worked for him to get out, but it's still kind of nebulous on why he was able to get out and why they let him out and what for. And then, for 4 to 5 months that he was out.
It was 7 months.
7 months. And then he has to go back. What was he doing in those 7 months? And when we know, based upon what our theory is he was arranging for their escape. But I'm sure that didn't take him that long to do.
No.
And so there was all those other months. What was he doing? Was he setting something up?
He was probably being followed. So if he had any contact whatsoever with the England family, it probably wasn't him himself. It was either, somebody that was working with him. I can't even imagine that they were not following. But, something I thought about one day was when you talk about the Supreme Court justices today, have you ever heard of them ever doing anything on their own? Like normally, if they take a case, it's done as a group. Or if they make a ruling on anything, it's done as a group. Yeah. I have never heard of any individual Supreme Court justice doing something after they've gotten to that point, doing something that the other justices were not involved in. Like If
no.
someone came and wanted that bond signed, would it not have gone before every one of the justices? Why is it like one did it on its own?
Yeah, I don't know how the Supreme Court works like that. It doesn't sound like it does, but
No.
like I said, when we presented that to all of the former federal agents we've had on here, they said it's never, because they don't understand why it was done. They said it's never been done before, and they don't know why it was done. Because you would think if that something happened like that, it would go to a lower court, like a lower federal court, district federal court in that area, and work its way up. Unless, that's why I say that Mickey Cohen had the power that he did, and his attorneys they can escalate it to that point. But, getting back to when the old LAPD guy was telling me how, that they were bugging him. They bugged the TV that he bought in a store. So he had a bug in his house in Bel Air inside the TV. So, but what's interesting is that I couldn't find any files on Mickey Cohen from that.
I do have some.
From LAPD?
Not from the LAPD, but from the FBI.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were looking locally here.
To give me the document, I did hear back from the FBI when I requested that document, where someone was going to his farm in Mexico and also to Brazil. And as they came back, they were coming to see him. So he undoubtedly had ties in Mexico and in Brazil. But whenever I requested the Freedom of Information Act, they responded back in a letter saying that it was national security, that they could not give me this information.
What is it? National security? That's I understand. What
you tell me. They quoted the line that they quoted on why they refused to give it to me was they had several items on the back of the letter that they could say that, because of maybe an informant, but they listed national security.
That's kind of a standard kind of default answer for a lot of things to tell you to go away.
I guess.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's why it comes, like you said, it all comes back to Mickey Cohen and why. Who was he connected to? What did he have? And it's all leverage. I'm sure he had something on people in the government that enabled him to get the Supreme Court justice, or it was just his lawyers were really good lawyers. But why get him out only for like 7 months? I mean,
he was appealing his conviction for tax evasion. That's what his bond was based on. He had appealed it. Earl Warren signed it to get him out so he can pursue that case, which he did do. There was he goes back to trial, and his appeal is eventually denied. And Ken had said previously that they gave him a choice of where he wanted to go back to. He could have stayed where he was in LA, but he opted to go back to Alcatraz. That was his choice, which is a very perplexing decision. Why would he want to go back there and go elsewhere? Well, because the connection, our belief is the connection to the brothers. He had unfinished business and he needed to get back to him to give him the information, because one of the things we've also talked about was they had their initial raft, which was mostly finished, which took, who knows how many weeks to construct out of the stolen raincoats.
Yeah.
They abandoned that raft just weeks before the escape and reconstruct a new raft. Well, that's based on the information that Mickey Cohen provided about the boat, and they needed to put the little eye hole in the front so that it could be towed. So his information altered their escape plan of what they were intending to do. So it sort of hints at the idea that because Mickey Cohen was gone for many, many months, they probably thought, well, that idea is not going to work. So we're going to probably have to paddle our way out either to San Francisco or Angel Island or possibly somewhere else in the Bay. But then they went back to the boat idea, and that's eventually what happened. Just one other thing I want to mention about Mickey Cohen. One of the things the FBI report does say was that he was really annoyed with the LAPD because they kept harassing him. As you said, that they bugged his house. They were trailing him, following him, monitoring his actions. This is before Alcatraz. And they would arrest him on little things, just like, oh, you're going 5 miles over the speed limit. They'd arrest him. Or that was not a green light. That was a red light. We're going to arrest you, kind of a thing. And they kept harassing him and kind of just trying to get under his skin. Well, finally he filed a lawsuit against the LAPD for violating his constitutional rights. That they were just looking for reasons to kind of get at him. And he believed that the real cause of this was not the LAPD, but they were getting pressure from the Kennedy brothers to try to get this guy.
Oh yeah,
Robert was really after him.
Yeah, they wanted to stop him for running a red light, or it's not rolling through a stop sign, and hopefully he had something on them that they could keep him in longer to hold him in so they can question him about something else. So yeah.
Yeah. So he was really upset about that. And I think his case was, he was not successful in his lawsuit against the LAPD.
Did you know, because I found this out because we're pulling all this archival now for the doc series, and we found this thing where he owned a clothing store.
He did.
And he was there's like video of him, like he's having a liquidation sale.
Well, I sent you some photographs that I found recently as I was doing a little bit more digging with Mickey Cohen about this sale. There's a newspaper ad in the paper about this clothing store, and there's a picture of him in front when he's going out of business, and he's kind of posing in front of the store, and that was his front operation, I think.
Exactly, one of many, I'm sure.
It's just crazy that when you think about the connection between Mickey Cohen and the people that he knew, like Earl Warren, which ultimately heads up the Warren Commission, and then Jack Ruby, and then Candy Bar, and all of these characters that he's associated with had some type of a connection with the JFK killing.
Mm-hmm.
I know, it makes sense.
So it's so odd. I mean, where it took place at, the people that he knew that were involved with this, and, all the way up until the point where, Candy Bar is pardoned by the governor of Texas, who was in the front seat and gets shot at the same time that Kennedy gets shot. I mean, why would he pardon Candy Bar? What did that have anything to do? I mean, why would he say, okay, well, let's pardon her right after the shooting?
It doesn't make any sense.
It's quid pro quo. They wanted her to keep quiet. It was a deal.
The other thing too, it goes also to Robert Kennedy, his assassination, because at the Ambassador Hotel in '68, where he was shot, that was the base of Mickey Cohen's operation. That's where he did business, was at the Ambassador. Yep. So why would Robert Kennedy, give the famous speech that he gave just because he had just won California in the primary, and why would he do that there of all places? Well, it's from back in the day when he was trying to take Cohen down, so he's thumbing his nose at Cohen, and that's where he gets killed. Yeah. So did Cohen have something to do with it?
Yeah, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. is convinced that Sirhan, he shot at his father, but he says Sirhan didn't pull the trigger. The bullet that he shot did not kill his dad. It came from another gun.
There's a lot of things that occurred in 1962 and 1963
that's what I'm talking about.
Totally blows you away when I'm not a conspiracy theory nut.
Well, you can be for this. It's easy.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you had, we've said this before, you had John F. Kennedy and Bobby. I mean, he wanted to get rid of the CIA. He wanted to reform. He really wanted to, slash a lot of the government things that he felt that were not good for the country. And he made it public about it, and internally. And so when you have that, what better plan is to use, everything at your disposal? You have connections with the mob and stuff like that. and Mickey Cohen. You have all these other connections. You know, that was the first thing that Bobby Kennedy said to the head of the CIA, like the day after at his house. And Bobby Kennedy Jr. heard it. He was a little boy and he heard the whole thing. He said, "Did the CIA kill my dad? Kill my brother?"
Well, I still believe after reading that document on Mickey Cohen that if Mickey Cohen owned a farm in Mexico, which we know he did, you know, based upon him hiding Candy Bar and her daughter out at for a short period of time, he also had some type of connection in Brazil. And I believe if we could really get access to those documents, we will probably find out that he owned a farm in Brazil also, which is more than likely where the brothers wound up at. You know, I've always couldn't understand why in the world they would just go to Brazil, you know, not knowing anyone, show up in a town, even if you had some money that could help, you know, support you for a little while. I mean, you had to have some type of connection, you know. Yeah. And it's the same thing that I've said about whoever flew them out of the country into Mexico, which we know is Fred Breezy.
Yeah.
Had to know where you were going.
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing that really makes me like really that when I was reading the book and how you guys layered that in the book about how you introduced Fred Breezy and how, you know, when those guys, when the father, Fred Breezy's family said, "You can't hang around with those England guys anymore." He goes, you're going to reach your pilot's license. You're going to be a straight arrow. And the fact that he used that was the way he was able to connect with Mickey Cohen and then bring the brothers into it. It's like, it's so unlikely that would happen. And the fact that it did, and how it's like everything kind of fit together after that point, that was my aha moment when I was reading the book and that connection. And then when I found out that he became a pilot and then he introduced him to Mickey Cohen, and I'm like, this makes sense now. This makes sense. That's how these two farm boys connected with one of the most powerful mobsters in the country, if not the world.
Well, and you know, we know through, you know, from Fred Breezy's criminal history record, that he was a big time, not a small time drug running person out of South America. He was huge. I mean, it wasn't just him and his plane. He had multiple airplanes and multiple people flying it out of Colombia, out of South America, into the United States. And we're not talking about you going down and, you know, of course, I'm going to date myself. You know, it wasn't like he was moving a dime bag or
a dime
nickel bag or even
I don't even know what that is. What's a dime bag?
Ken knows what a dime bag is.
A pound of marijuana.
That's a pound, a dime bag?
No. No, it's not.
I just remember we used to call it a nickel and a dime.
Yeah, nickel and dime.
$5.
What is it? $5?
Yes, nickel is
$5. How much would that get you?
Just
you know, enough to get stoned.
Exactly. That's a little bit. And a dime bag was like
$10.
$10.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then it was 21 for a half ounce.
Yeah, you're correct.
Exactly.
So I mean, for him to move that kind of drugs, he wasn't like. And you don't fly into Colombia and go up and knock on some door and say, "Hey, I want to buy some marijuana." I mean,
it's ridiculous.
It's all an organization that was laid out. Even the FBI, who was investigating it during that affidavit, when they wiretapped their phones, they were talking about how large this was. This was not like something small. And so for him to be involved in that, it was something that came out of that Mickey Cohen connection. Mm-hmm. And the brothers were a part of this at some point in time. Whether or not they stayed in it or they eventually came out of it, you know, it was a big operation. It wasn't small.
No, he was a big time. He was big time.
Yep.
Well, the thing that I find amazing is, 63 years ago, the escape happened. And you have these little snippets of clues here and there that, Ken and I were able to pursue and connect and write a narrative about that. If one person didn't do something, then the story would have been much harder to figure out. If, Cliff Fish didn't do the interview with Michael, or he didn't do it with Michael Essinger, but he provided us with that interview about finding the raft on the island. If Fred Breezy didn't meet with the family and have it recorded, we wouldn't have that information. If Robert Chechi didn't do that interview with the Oakland Tribune a week after the escape, talking about his story about seeing the boat that night, and again and again and again, or if Fred Breezy didn't take pictures and then later give them to the family that can be analyzed, to put the whole, that there are enough clues out there that we're able to find to create this picture. And then now that we're able to do the show and we have leads that have been presented to us and we've been pursuing, that we can go to places and examine and talk to people and so forth, and look at forensic evidence, how much more is the story going to be more completed? When we're going to those places where this information resides, it's going to be, it's just remarkable that we're able to actually not create the story, but to follow the trail to its end point. And when we get to that end point, how big is that going to be? That's, like we talked before about Amelia Earhart, just recently they think they may have found the plane on this island from a satellite photo, and they're going to examine that location to see if the plane's there, buried, kind of off the island. And it's already a global story.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. I mean, you got the Alcatraz story, you have the Amelia Earhart story, you got the UFO story, you got the DB Cooper story. There's still, you have all these kind of legends and myths. But what's interesting is that, and that's the way I felt initially when we first started talking to you before we read the book. I go, well, this is, the interesting thing about when you guys first came on is the fact that family connection. The fact that these were your uncles, that made it really unique. But the fact that both of you have done so much legwork and investigation on this, and you guys, I mean, you're a writer, Mike. I mean, you do research for books and stuff like that. And Ken, you're not a research guy. You're not an investigator, and that's what we tell these people. Like when they're running up against brick walls on their cold cases and their family members. And we basically tell them, he says, you're going to have to do legwork. You're going to have to, because no one's going to take this as seriously as you are.
It's so sad,
and,
too.
If it wasn't for the continued work that you guys have done, and then we just kind of tagged along on the end, no one's trying to investigate. They're just rehashing the old information.
Yeah.
What's out there, you see all these, I see how many times I see on YouTube, the mystery solved, mystery solved. And it's like this crappy little YouTube video with this weird AI voiceover that's like talking about how, the mystery solved and this is what it is and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, no, but because it's not solved, you can say whatever you want. But it's the fact that we're coming together with hard data and forensic proof kind of takes it to another level. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, we're going to do with this documentary series. And we're hoping to wake some people up.
Well, if we're able to figure this out and prove it, beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's going to be big. It's going to be a big story. This is a big get. If we can nail this down, and like you said, we're just two guys. Obviously Ken is connected to the family, but I'm not an ex-FBI guy, and Ken's not an ex-Navy SEAL kind of a thing with special skills. We just have just a story that we want to see the conclusion to, and because of what you offer, through your connections to the TV industry and the people that you're going to bring onto the team. Our chances are very good that we're gonna figure this thing out.
Yeah, and it's like, as much work that Art has done on it and Marshall Dykes has done it, they're not working on this every day.
No.
They're not working on this, because they either know what's going on in their mind. They know what's going on, and because they probably still have security clearance, they're probably compelled to say as little as possible. But they're not doing the work that you guys have been doing at this point. I mean, they've done a lot of great work, but I mean, what's the holdup? That's what we always say to Art is like, well, why can't you tell us? What are you hiding? What's the big deal? They're dead already. All right. Everybody associated with this case is dead already.
Yeah, 65 years almost. What is there to hide?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does not make any sense.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of a new journey now.
New journey coming up. And then for all our listeners, probably not going to be on next week because we're literally prepping like crazy for this doc, and then we're going to be shooting the following week. So, but good things are coming. Can't wait to show you what we're going to be doing.
It's very exciting.
Very
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, guys.
All right,
See you
guys.
then.